Have you ever wondered what really lurks in the dark and unknown depths of the ocean? I thought I knew everything about marine life until a series of mysterious phone calls and a terrifying encounter at my cabin in Alaska changed my life forever. Who was the unknown person who warned me? What really happened that night? The answers might be scarier than any fiction. My name is Sarah Parker, and I am a 35-year-old marine biologist. After years dedicated to research and intense work, I realized I needed some time for myself. I decided that Alaska would be the perfect place to reconnect and escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life. I always wanted to explore its wild and peaceful landscapes. Moreover, the possibility of observing the rare beluga whale, a species that has always fascinated me, was a bonus I couldn't ignore. It would be a chance to rest and at the same time conduct some research on the local fauna. With everything prepared, I finalized the last details and bought my ticket. The weeks leading up to the trip were a mix of planning and anticipation. When the day finally came, I boarded the plane with a mix of relief and expectation. I was ready for a change of scenery, hoping to find the peace and focus I so desperately needed in the vast and beautiful Alaska. I decided that Sitka, a coastal town in Alaska, would be the perfect destination for my break. The town is known for its rich marine life and stunning landscapes, making it ideal for my needs of rest and study. The combination of natural tranquility and the opportunity to observe the rare beluga whale was an irresistible draw. But for me, this trip also represented a chance to escape the exhausting routine and find some peace. My arrival at Sitka Airport was marked by the cold, biting air that enveloped me as soon as I disembarked. The sight of the snow-covered mountains in the distance and the dense forest surrounding the town was impressive. The scenery looked like something out of a postcard, with icy peaks standing out against the grey sky and the constant sound of waves crashing against the rocky shore. I headed to the hotel I had booked, hoping to find a cozy place to rest after the long journey. However, upon arrival, I was greeted by an old and somewhat worn building. The lobby was small and dimly lit, with furniture that seemed to have come from a past decade. The narrow hallways and thin walls echoed every sound, from hurried footsteps to muffled conversations. The room, though clean, had an outdated and uninviting look. Heavy curtains blocked the little natural light that entered through the small windows, creating a gloomy atmosphere. A wooden bed creaked at the slightest movement, and the peeling paint on the walls told stories of better times. As I unpacked, I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. I had hoped to find a comfortable refuge, a place where I could relax and rejuvenate. Instead, I found myself in an environment that, although functional, did not offer the warmth I had imagined. I decided to go out and explore Sitka. The town had a welcoming atmosphere, with friendly people who seemed genuinely interested in learning about my stay. I visited a few local shops, where I met Hannah, the owner of a small bookstore. She welcomed me with a warm smile and seemed genuinely interested in helping me discover the secrets of the town. Hannah told me about the best places to observe marine life and recommended some must-see tourist spots. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and I soon felt more at ease in the new town. At a nearby cafe, I met Tom, a local fisherman, who gave me tips on the best times and places to see beluga whales. His passion for the sea was evident, and he described in detail the natural beauties I could find along the coast. Tom told fascinating stories about the beluga whales and the best times to observe them. Talking to him made me even more excited to start my explorations. After a day of exploring the town and meeting some locals, I returned to the hotel still dissatisfied with the room. While talking to Lisa, a receptionist, I mentioned my disappointment with the room and my desire for greater isolation to truly enjoy Sitka's nature. Lisa smiled understandingly and said, "If you're looking for isolation and a stunning view, I might have a suggestion. There's a cabin further away, near the coast, that can be rented on Airbnb. It's very isolated, but offers an incredible view of the sea and the mountains. Many previous guests loved the place for its privacy and proximity to nature. My curiosity was immediately piqued. The idea of an isolated cabin, surrounded by Alaska's untouched nature, seemed perfect. That sounds exactly like what I'm looking for, I replied, feeling the excitement grow. Do you have more information on how I can rent this cabin? Lisa provided me with the details and helped me look up the cabin on Airbnb. The photos showed a rustic but charming place, with large windows offering panoramic views of the ocean and the surrounding mountains. Each image looked more inviting than the last, and the descriptions from previous guests only heightened my expectations. After checking availability, I made the reservation immediately. The idea of moving to a place that truly met my expectations filled me with enthusiasm. That night, I returned to my hotel room with a renewed sense of hope and excitement, eager to begin this new phase of my stay in Sitka. The next day, I woke up with a renewed sense of anticipation. I checked out of the hotel, happy to leave that unwelcoming place behind. With the cabin keys in hand and detailed instructions from Lisa, I was ready to head to my new refuge. The trip to the cabin was breathtaking. The winding road took me through magnificent landscapes, with dense pine forests that seemed to stretch endlessly. The fresh, pure air filled my lungs, while the tranquility of nature around me completely enveloped me. As I got closer, the sight of the ocean in the distance became clearer, its waves gently breaking against the coastal rocks. Finally, I arrived at the cabin. It was everything I could have hoped for and more. The rustic wooden structure blended perfectly with the natural surroundings. Large windows occupied most of the facade facing the sea, providing a breathtaking panoramic view. The cabin was surrounded by dense forest, offering the isolation I so desired. The sense of peace that washed over me upon seeing the cabin was indescribable. Upon entering, I was greeted by a cozy and well-maintained interior. The polished wooden floor, combined with simple but comfortable furniture, created an inviting atmosphere. There was a small fireplace with a stone mantel in the corner, perfect for the cold nights that would surely come. The kitchen was compact, but equipped with everything I would need during my stay. I climbed the wooden stairs to the mezzanine, where I found the main bedroom. The bed, covered with a soft and inviting comforter, was positioned so that I could wake up every day with a view of the ocean in the distance. There was a small desk by the window, ideal for my notes and research work. Every detail of the cabin seemed to have been designed to provide comfort and tranquility. I went out to explore the surroundings, walking to the edge of the forest. The sound of the waves and the distant song of seabirds created a natural symphony that completely enveloped me. Around the cabin, the trees were dense and tall, with lush green mosses, creating a serene and isolated environment. The isolation, natural beauty, and proximity to the sea were more than I could have dreamed of. The cabin wasn't just a place to stay. It was a sanctuary that offered exactly what I needed. I was eager to start my days of rest and research, diving into the tranquility and inspiration that this magical place provided. The idea of spending my days observing the local fauna, with the rare opportunity to see beluga whales, made my heart beat faster. As I settled in, I couldn't help but reflect on the luck of finding this place. I felt grateful to be surrounded by the untouched nature of Alaska, where each day promised new discoveries and moments of peace. With the bags finally unpacked, I sat on the cabin's porch, gazing at the endless horizon of the ocean. The cold and invigorating sea breeze caressed my face, and I knew at that moment that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The first days at the cabin were dedicated to establishing a routine that would allow me to make the most of the time for rest and research. I woke up early every morning, with the soft light of the rising sun reflecting on the ocean, a spectacle that never failed to impress me. The serenity of the place provided the calm I so desperately needed. My routine started with a morning walk through the forest around the cabin. The tall, moss-covered trees created a tranquil and isolated environment. The fresh, pure air was invigorating, and the song of seabirds provided a natural soundtrack that accompanied me throughout the walk. I felt a deep peace while exploring the untouched nature. After the walk, I prepared a simple breakfast, enjoying the panoramic view of the sea through the cabin's large windows. Then, I organized my research equipment and prepared for the day of monitoring. Sitka's coast offered a rich and diverse habitat, ideal for studying marine fauna. My research focused mainly on beluga whales, but I also documented other species I encountered. I used my field journal to note every sighting, recording unique behaviors and interactions. The belugas, with their white skin and curious behavior, were especially fascinating. The way they communicated and moved in groups was a spectacle I never tired of observing. Besides the belugas, I frequently encountered seals, sea otters, and a variety of seabirds. Each new discovery was meticulously recorded, with observations on behavior, feeding, and interaction with the environment. I used binoculars and a high-resolution camera to capture detailed images, which I later analysed meticulously. The afternoons were dedicated to reviewing notes and organising the collected data. Sitting at the desk by the window, with sunlight illuminating my notes, I felt a deep satisfaction in each detail recorded. The fireplace, now lit to ward off the growing cold of the evening, contributed to the cosy and conducive working environment. The initial sense of calm was remarkable. The solitude of the refuge, far from the hustle and bustle of the city, allowed me to focus entirely on the research and connection with nature. At night, after a simple dinner, I enjoyed sitting on the porch, watching the stars reflected in the ocean, and listening to the sound of the waves breaking on the shore. It was a moment of reflection and gratitude, where I could process the day's experiences and prepare for tomorrow's discoveries. The isolated cabin was not just a place of rest, but a true research sanctuary. Each day brought a new opportunity to learn and grow, both professionally and personally. I was exactly where I needed to be, in harmony with the environment and deeply connected to the mission I had chosen for my life. It was a quiet night at the cabin, the fireplace lit, and a hot tea in hand when the phone suddenly rang. The sound echoed through the silent room, breaking the serenity of the moment. I answered without understanding who could be calling. After all, I wasn't expecting any calls. "Hello," I said, surprised and a little apprehensive. On the other end of the line, a hoarse and urgent male voice began to speak. "You need to get out of there. There's something dangerous in the sea, something that can reach your cabin." I frowned, even more confused. "Who is this? Is this a joke?" the voice continued, ignoring my question. "It's not safe. They don't want you to know, but you need to leave now." As a biologist, my first reaction was pure skepticism. I spent years studying various forms of marine life and never encountered anything that could be a direct threat to someone on land. My mind began to rationalize. Maybe it was just a bad joke, someone trying to scare me. I even thought it might be some kind of plan from the hotel staff to get me out of the cabin and back there. "Look, if this is a joke, it's not funny," I responded firmly, trying to end the conversation. "I'm here to work, and I'm not falling for local pranks." The voice became more insistent. "This is not a joke. Please, you have to believe me. There are things in the sea that you don't understand, that no one understands. Stay safe." I hung up the phone, trying to process the strange call. I tried to convince myself it was just someone playing a prank. After all, the cabin was isolated, and the idea of something coming from the sea seemed absurd. Still trying to regain my tranquility after the strange phone call, I sat back in the armchair and resumed looking at the fire in the fireplace. It wasn't long before the phone rang again, making my heart jump. I answered with a mixture of irritation and apprehension. "Hello?" I said, now more firmly. The same male voice, now even more urgent, spoke quickly. "It's approaching. The creature is coming towards your cabin. You need to leave now." Before I could respond, the call ended. I quickly got up and went to the window. The outside was enveloped in thick darkness, but I strained my eyes to see through the night. Initially, I saw nothing but the shadows of trees swaying in the wind, but then a strange movement caught my attention. Something was moving towards the cabin. Even with the little light, I could discern an unusual shape, something that didn't look human or animal. My scientific instincts began to fight against the fear rising up my spine. I tried to rationalize what I was seeing, but logic was failing. The creature moved in a strange way, as if sliding over the ground. When it got closer, I could see details that heightened my fear. It looked like a hybrid between human and fish, with shiny scales reflecting the dim light and large inhuman eyes that seemed to see me. My heart was pounding, but I tried to stay calm. It could be some kind of hallucination, I thought, or some animal I don't recognize. But as the creature got closer, this theory seemed increasingly unlikely. Its features were simply wrong. The creature began to circle the cabin, moving with unsettling fluidity. Each of its movements increased my terror. I watched as it passed by the windows, its shape standing out against the dark background of the night. I tried to mentally catalogue the creature's characteristics, searching for some logical explanation. But I was paralyzed by the mixture of fear and disbelief. I took a deep breath, trying to think rationally. Maybe it's some kind of elaborate prank, I told myself, although I knew that was unlikely. But whatever it was out there, prowling around the cabin. I needed to decide quickly what to do next. The phone rang again, interrupting my frantic thoughts. I answered quickly, my voice trembling. "Hello?" I said, the urgency evident in my voice. The same male voice responded, now calmer but still intense. "There's a trapdoor in the bedroom under the rug. It leads to the basement. Go there now." My heart raced as the call ended. Without wasting any time, I ran to the bedroom, fear now turning into pure panic. Behind me, I heard the sound of the creature beginning to force the cabin door. The wood creaked and cracked under the pressure. I reached the bedroom and threw the rug aside, revealing the trapdoor mentioned in the call. With trembling hands, I opened the trapdoor, revealing a staircase leading down into the darkness of the basement. I heard a loud crack from the front door and knew the creature was almost inside. I quickly descended the stairs, pulling the trapdoor shut over me as I hid in the basement. A second later, I heard the sound of the cabin door giving way. The creature had entered. The basement was cold and damp, the air heavy with the smell of mold. However, all this was overshadowed by the sound of heavy footsteps and objects being knocked over upstairs. The creature was exploring the cabin, and I could clearly hear its every move. The creature moved through the cabin, breaking furniture and knocking everything in its path. Each sound seemed amplified in my mind, heightening the terror I felt. When the footsteps approached the bedroom, I held my breath, trying to make as little noise as possible. I could smell the creature even from the basement. A repugnant odour of dead fish and rot that seeped through the trapdoor. The heavy, uneven footsteps of the creature echoed directly above me, and each creak of the floorboards felt like a hammer on my already frayed nerves. Lying on the cold basement floor, I stayed still, trying not to make any sound that could attract the creature. Fear tightened my chest, but I knew I had to stay calm to survive. The footsteps continued to prowl the room above me, each movement a constant reminder of the danger I faced. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps began to move away. I heard the creature move to other parts of the cabin, but the fear remained, knowing it was still there, hunting. I stayed in the basement, trying to remain as quiet as possible, waiting for the moment when the creature would finally leave. With trembling hands, I tried to call for emergency services, but there was no signal. No call went through, which only increased my despair. How did that person manage to call me if I couldn't contact anyone? Frustration and fear mixed in my mind, creating a whirlwind of emotions that made it difficult to think clearly. After what seemed like an eternity, still trying to remain as silent as possible, my phone rang again, breaking the terrifying silence of the basement. I answered quickly, my voice trembling and full of fear. "Hello," I whispered, barely able to form the words. She left. "You can come up now, but you need to leave the cabin as soon as possible. The creature can return at any moment," said the same male voice, still urgent but calm. The call ended before I could ask any more questions. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. Despite the fear, I knew I couldn't stay in the basement forever. With great care, I slowly opened the trapdoor and peeked into the bedroom. There was no sign of the creature, but the room was in chaos, with broken furniture and objects scattered on the floor. I climbed up slowly, each step making me more anxious. The air in the cabin still carried the repugnant odour of rot, but it seemed lighter than before. I looked around, trying to hear any sound that might indicate the creature's presence. The silence was almost deafening. The living room was destroyed. The fireplace that once provided warmth and comfort was now surrounded by broken wooden debris. The shelves had been knocked over, and books were scattered on the floor, some torn. The coffee table was in pieces, with broken legs and shards of glass from a vase that once adorned the table. The sofa was overturned, with torn cushions and exposed foam. The chaos was total, as if a hurricane had passed through. The bedroom wasn't any better. The bed was unmade, with the mattress askew and blankets strewn across the floor. The dresser drawers were open and ransacked, clothes scattered everywhere. The vanity mirror was cracked, reflecting the devastation with eerie precision. As I drove along the icy trail, the darkness of the night seemed to envelop everything around me. The truck's headlights illuminated only a small part of the road ahead, making it difficult to see what was coming. The trees passed quickly by the windows, dense shadows that heightened the sense of isolation. The road was treacherous, full of sharp curves and slippery sections. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to keep the vehicle steady while my heart pounded uncontrollably. The fear still accompanied me, but now it was mixed with a fierce determination to reach the meteorological research base and find safety. Suddenly, as I made a sharper turn, I saw movement on the road ahead. My stomach tightened as I recognized the familiar and terrifying shape of the creature. It stood in the middle of the road, its hybrid human-fish body reflecting the headlights grotesquely. Its large, inhuman eyes seemed to fix on me, and a chill ran down my spine. My instinct was to hit the brakes, but I knew stopping would be dangerous. Instead, I accelerated, trying to swerve around the creature. It moved fluidly, almost as if it was gliding on the ice. I passed it with my heart in my throat, the brutal fear dominating me as the creature disappeared into the shadows behind me. I continued driving, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Every sound of the night seemed amplified, and every shadow transformed into a potential threat. The silence of the forest was interrupted only by the sound of the truck's engine and the crunch of the tires on the ice. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw the faint lights of the meteorological research base in the distance. A sigh of relief escaped my lips as I approached. The simple but sturdy building looked like a beacon of hope in the oppressive darkness of the night. I parked the truck and ran to the door, my heart still pounding. I knocked forcefully, hoping someone was there to help me. After a few moments, the door opened, revealing a man who looked tired but alert. "What's going on?" he asked, clearly surprised by my arrival. "Please, let me in," I pleaded, glancing back, fearing the creature might appear at any moment. "There's something out there chasing me." He pulled me inside and locked the door behind me. "You're safe here," he said, trying to calm me. "Let's figure out what's going on." Finally, I felt a wave of relief knowing I was in a safe place, but questions and fear still hung in the air. Still panting and with nerves on edge, I sat in a chair as the man offered me a cup of hot tea. He watched me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Between trembling sips, I began to recount the night's events. "I was at the cabin," I began, when I received the first of 4 anonymous calls warning me about a dangerous creature in the sea that could come to me. I thought it was a prank, but then the creature appeared. It was something hybrid between human and fish. I managed to hide in the basement, but it destroyed the cabin. Later, I received another call saying the creature had left and that I needed to get out. He frowned upon hearing about the calls. "Calls? But in this region, it's almost impossible to get cell signal unless you have a satellite phone. And even then, it would be very unstable." My mind reeled with the new information. How did that stranger manage to call me if I had no signal? This made the situation even more bewildering and frightening. "I have no idea how he managed to call," I replied, confused. "My phone couldn't complete any calls, but he managed to speak to me 4 times. The man nodded thoughtfully. There's an urban legend around here about a creature with those characteristics you described. It's a tale the old fishermen used to tell, a story to scare the younger ones. The creature is known as the Deep One, half human, half fish, predator of the depths. But there has never been a real sighting. It's just a legend. As he spoke, a wave of disbelief mixed with terror washed over me. It was hard to accept that something so grotesque could be real, but I had seen it with my own eyes. And now, everything seemed even more surreal. Anyway, he continued, you can stay here for the night. This base is safe, and at dawn, the patrol officers can go to your cabin to investigate. I nodded in gratitude, feeling a momentary relief. The shelter of the research base, with its solid walls and the man's company, offered a sense of security I hadn't felt in hours. I spent the night awake, mulling over the events and his words, trying to make sense of it all. The next day, the sun had barely risen when we heard the sound of vehicles approaching. The patrol officers arrived, their faces serious and attentive. I recounted everything that had happened again, detailing the 4 calls, the attack, and the creature's appearance. They listened intently, exchanging glances among themselves. We will investigate the cabin, one of the officers said, and see if we find any evidence of what might have happened. In the meantime, you should stay here. It's safer. I agreed, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. The wait would be torturous, but I needed to know what they would find. The officers left, and I stayed at the base with the man, waiting for news and trying to calm the chaotic thoughts still dominating my mind. Hours later, the officers returned to the research base. Their faces were serious, but they showed no signs of having found anything extraordinary. I felt a chill run down my spine when one of the officers approached. We investigated the cabin, he began, and found everything as you described. Broken furniture, debris everywhere. However, we found no evidence of the creature you mentioned. My mind spun with the information. But I saw it. I smelled it. It was there. I insisted, my voice trembling with confusion and fear. The officers exchanged looks before continuing. We know you went through a very frightening experience, one of them said. We will continue investigating, but without concrete evidence, it's hard to understand what really happened. The sense of disbelief and isolation grew. The officers' words sounded almost like a verdict, and I noticed the doubt in their eyes. It was as if they were starting to think I had suffered some kind of breakdown. Feeling the need to justify my actions, I looked at the man who had taken me in. You believe me, don't you? I asked, my voice shaking. He sighed, shaking his head slowly. I believe you went through something terrible, Sarah. But without concrete evidence, it's hard for everyone to understand what really happened. His words were a blow, but also a sad confirmation. No matter how much I explained or insisted, the mystery would remain. After a while, I realized there was nothing more to do there. I thanked the man and the officers for their help and decided to leave. As I drove back to civilization, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and doubts. I couldn't understand what had really happened, whether it had all been real or a product of a panic attack. The mysterious calls continued to intrigue me. Who was the person who called me? How did they manage to do so without cell signal? And why did they seem to know so much about the creature and the situation? As I crossed the city's border, I looked one last time at the vast and wild Alaska. I felt a strange mix of relief and frustration. I would never know for sure what had happened that night, whether the creature was real or just an illusion created by fear and isolation. And so, with a mind full of unanswered questions, I left behind the cabin and the mysteries it held. What remained was an inexplicable story and an experience that would mark me forever, leaving me with the eternal doubt about what really lurks in the depths of the unknown.